Thank you for tuning in to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Kira.
And today, we're going to be bringing one of our deep dive analysis breakdowns for all of our listeners today. I'm really excited about this one. This will be our first deep dive.
And we are deep diving into Borderlands.
Yes. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Borderlands is a video game franchise, and it has a certain number of games in it. Borderlands, Borderlands 2, Borderlands the pre-sequel, and Tales from the Borderlands. Borderlands 3 should be coming out relatively soonish because they're working on it right now, but as of now, it's not out. So spoilers for every game but that one.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like, spoilers for all of it, everything, because we're going to be really going that deep into it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go deeper. This is only going to be an hour podcast at most. We'll see how long we last. So we actually recently just finished playing Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, and we'll go into more into it later, but I'm just gonna say that was an emotional roller coaster.
Yes, so if you're not familiar with the franchise, Borderlands is kind of like an FPS shooter thing, but that one game goes into a more storytelling narrative.
It's by Telltale.
Yes, but the main franchise is by Gearbox. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to break down the storyline, like the history of the Borderlands universe. Like, if you actually live there, what would your history look like? Now, we only know so much. In fact, once you see the kind of state of the Borderlands universe, you'll see why history is something that's kind of hard to come by.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Let's set the stage. We'll tell you about the history, and then later, if we get some time at the end, we'll talk about what we feel about the game and its pros and cons. But this, really what we're trying to focus here on is this fictional story and universe. Think of this like a history lesson. It just hasn't happened yet. Okay, so you want me to start? Or?
You can start.
Okay, thanks, Kira. So, in the distant past, there was the era of the Eridians. These were aliens that had an interstellar empire with incredibly advanced technology. They had a resource that they called iridium. It was this like purple metallic substance, but it had like so much energy potential. And they also had these many secret vaults that they had throughout their interstellar empire that were used for many nebulous purposes. After a certain point, there was the Eridian cataclysm, where this entity called the Destroyer appeared from another dimension. The Eridians sacrificed their civilization to imprison it in one of the prison vaults on a planet called Pandora. And it had another vault on a kind of like watchtower known as its moon, Elpis. The Eridians all died, and only their robotic guardians are left to remember them. Yeah,
and they were left to guard these vaults.
Yes, that was essentially their primary duty, was guarding all of these vaults.
I suppose sometime after that? A long, long time after that. So Pandora's climate changed over that time to become more arid in more places, reducing the amount of water over its surface.
Yeah, climate change on Pandora. Thanks, aliens. Millions, thousands, I don't know, a long time of years after that point, humans eventually became a spacefaring species. Like, this is just a fact in the Borderlands universe. Like, oh yeah, we go around space all the time. What's the big deal?
Yep.
Jealous. And eventually they have what's called the corporate wars, where corporations have so much power and weaponry that they can challenge the government for supremacy.
Yes.
It's quite scary.
And then a corporation called Atlas discovers a planet called Promethea. And they deploy the Crimson Lance, which is their army, and discover alien technology on Promethea.
Well, technically Crimson Lance was like a mercenary group that they hired out. But since they worked exclusively for Atlas, it's kind of one and the same.
Yeah, it was their private army.
Yeah, it's like real world corporations today that hire mercenary groups, which actually happens scarily enough. And they discovered alien technology. So mega corporations like Atlas used alien technology to become wealthy, and they used it to colonize many planets. So Atlas was, king of the corporations at this time. When they colonized many planets, one of these planets was Pandora, and they did this to search for more alien technology.
Mm-hmm. After Atlas colonized all these planets and became the biggest corporation, Hyperion was founded by Maxim Turner with Alma Heron and Lawrence DeQuitt. Those three were the founders of Hyperion.
Yes. So Hyperion is the next of the big mega corporations because Maxim Turner, the CEO, was filthy rich. And his co-founder, Alma Heron, she was a former sniper in the corporate wars, known for an extremely impressive kill count, which means that she killed, the central government soldiers. Mm-hmm. Because that's who the war was between, the government versus the corporations. Mm-hmm. So that's great. And so she worked in weapons development, obviously. And then Lawrence DeQuitt was in AI development.
Yes.
So after that, you had Smith versus Hyperion, where Atlas was selling Hyperion some night-night shrooms from Pandora. They were sold to children because they were meant to be really good sleeping aids or something like that.
But they had terrible side effects.
Yes, and so Smith versus Hyperion was the last known court case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, side note, there's a guy named TK Baha, or Teddy Baha. He's a weapons inventor who has his weapons stolen by Hyperion. Mm-hmm. Hyperion was claiming the designs for them illegally.
Yeah. And
it got to the point where Baha was hunted down. He had to escape to live the rest of his days on Pandora.
Yeah. And then after that, the last corporate war occurred, which was instigated by Hyperion, and they profited quite a bit, and the central government fell in that final war.
That's literally what made them profit. Mm-hmm. And then meanwhile, you have the claptraps, or the CL4P-TP, general purpose robots that were developed by Lawrence. Unfortunately, he died before he was able to fix the flaws in their artificial personalities. This will come up later.
Yes. There was a Pandoran gold rush where
Atlas engaged the Crimson Lance on Pandora and distributes the engorged drug to the populace, creating what are called psychos and other mutants. These were basically just people that were trying to live their lives. They got hooked on this drug and then they just kind of go crazy. That's why they're called psychos. A lot of the times there's a disassociative thing between their minds and bodies. They just shout random nonsense and it's hard to know what they're really thinking. They're very murderous.
Yes. And so this means the Atlas Corporation put the Crimson Lance on Pandora at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
They were also drug peddlers.
Yeah.
But they advertised it saying, you'll be better with guns. Mm-hmm. They also discovered alien technology and iridium on Pandora, which initiated that gold rush. Uh-huh. Then because of that, many of those companies, they raced to Pandora. In addition, Atlas also created what was known as the Gortys Project. It was made with the intention of finding a specific vault, one that supposedly would teleport throughout the universe. At any given point, it would only be in a certain physical space for a few minutes at a time before going to another random spot, making it basically impossible to find. Mm-hmm. So the goal was to create a robot with a beacon that could summon the vault to the user. Massive resources were just dumped into this project. It didn't really go anywhere anytime soon.
While this was happening, Dahl arrived, colonizing Elpis.
Dahl is one of the other corporations.
Yes.
DAHL.
Yes. They arrived and colonized Elpis and some of Pandora, and they began mining, I assume, iridium or some other resource on Pandora.
Actually, there was a lot of methane.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, just mining in general, resources, harvesting.
And they were mining with prison labor. This will become important later.
Yes. In fact, because of all that mining, because they weren't just mining on Pandora, they were also mining on its moon, it ended up creating something called the Krakening, where Dahl's mining essentially fractured Elpis and made it spew lava across its surface. It was very bad for the ecosystem. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I should. Just the ecosystem of the planet. Like, I mean, we already mentioned there's alien life here, but there's so many, like, alien flora and fauna, and they're pretty monstrous because Pandora is actually smaller in size than Earth. And because it's smaller, that's why in these games you're able to jump higher because there's less gravity to affect you, especially when you're on the moon.
Yeah.
And the moon also has less air, but it still has some, which is why you're able to go longer without having air. I mean, somehow the creatures are also incredibly strong. I mean, that explains why they're giant, doesn't explain why they're strong. Because they could just be giant and weak, but okay, they're strong. I'll go with it.
Yes, and after the Krakening is when Dahl left Elpis, and I believe its holdings on Pandora as well.
So after that, the company Torg is founded by Mr. Torg. He then immediately sells the ownership to his board of directors for $12 and a high five. And he focuses on being the face of the company. They keep him around just because he's so iconic with it.
Yep.
Yeah, you couldn't fire your icon like that without getting a huge PR downturn.
Yeah, PR nightmare.
And so many companies at this point were selling weapons to Pandora and Elpis from all over, like all of the major corporations, you know, all 12 of them or however many there are. Yeah, keep in mind, like, corporations have conglomerate. There are only a handful of them. So the ones that are selling weapons are Anshin, Atlas, Dahl, Gearbox, Hyperion, Jacobs, Malawan, Pangolin, S&S Munitions, Tedior, Torg, and Vladoff. So these are all the corporations. I know it's a lot of names for you guys to memorize, but some of them just kind of sell weapons. Only some of them will be more important in the story later on.
Yep.
And then there's this family lineage of the Kincaid family, and Marcus the Seventh becomes a prolific weapons dealer to all sides of all conflicts on Pandora and Elpis, just like his relatives before him. So he's the one who ends up getting pretty much any of these weapons. In the game, he runs all of the vending machines, and he has killed all of the competition.
Yes, and this happens because there's a lot of conflict on Pandora.
See, this is what happens when you don't have a central government.
But yeah, there's a lot of conflict on Pandora between corporations and then just people defending themselves, so yeah.
Yeah, so Pandora by this point, you know, it's crazy. You've got the psychos running loose, all those convicts that Dahl had, that, yeah, they kind of just let them loose eventually, and those end up becoming the bandits. And then you got weapons dealers all over the place. And then meanwhile, Hyperion goes all in and deploys a massive space station between Pandora and Elpis to try to dominate the other companies, and this is called Helios. It's a giant satellite shaped like the letter H, just like the H in Hyperion.
Yes.
And they literally sandwich it between the moon and the planet, so no matter which one you're on, you have to look past the satellite.
Yes, and it is a huge base.
Yeah, like this is of something big. Imagine like an elephant, and then do that like 50,000 more times. Anyway, so eventually the Hyperion CEO Harold Tassiter, he hides his master key, the H source, within the original model of the claptrap. It's mostly just for safekeeping. It's never expressly said why he hid it there.
Yeah.
Just that he didn't want other people to get it. And then, so we want to take a moment to talk about Sirens. Would you care to do that, Kira?
Sirens were basically mostly women.
Entirely women.
Yeah, just entirely women who demonstrated like psychic powers or other kinds of powers and were powered by the Iridium on Pandora. And this caused these people to be born with those powers. And what was it? There's a rule that there are only like 6 existing sirens at a time.
Yes, and it seems to have some type of a link with Pandora and the alien technology there, because It doesn't seem like this was a thing that's just always been, or if it was, Borderlands has never really admitted to that. But what we do know is at the time of the story, there are only ever 6 Sirens at any given time. And when one dies, that means a baby that is born will be a Siren, as long as that baby is female.
And we don't know much more than that about the Sirens.
But they also have like supernatural abilities, because the aliens, they had technology that seemed like magic. It was just so advanced. The Eridians did, you know. And the Sirens can kind of do that, but they're limited to a singular ability. Yeah. A phasing kind of ability that has to do with the nature of how reality works. Next stage of our story. So there's a Hyperion programmer. His name is John. He discovers that his daughter is a Siren when she unleashes her powers upon her mother. Doesn't seem like she survived that.
Yeah.
He ends up moving up the corporate ladder, and he gets more resources because of that. He ends up remarrying, and then he experiments with Iridium on his daughter.
Yeah.
Eventually, he becomes the technical director of Helios.
Which is the top position on Helios.
Well, it's the top mechanical position.
Oh, yes, because there's the CEO still.
Oh yeah, and the VPs and the business managers, like it's not even close to top, honestly. It's like mid-level.
Yeah.
I mean, it's top if you want to know how to, hack the base, which might come in handy.
Yeah.
So there's these people that end up becoming known as vault hunters, because rumors of treasures within the vaults ends up spreading, and it leads to many people to move to Pandora to seek out the vault. So at this point, not only do you have the corporations coming in, you actually have just people, just regular, does the word citizen even apply anymore? Consumers. You have regular consumers moving to Pandora in the hopes of finding a vault and striking it rich. Is the best hope they have. And there's people called vault hunters that are really skilled and specialize in doing that. The Crimson Lance ends up taking over the town of Haven, which ends up pushing out the residents to form another town called New Haven. There's this group of people in Pandora. They're called the Hodunk clan, and a mother of a clan of these mechanics ends up escaping with her children, Scooter and Ellie.
That will become important later.
Everything becomes important later. There's also this group of 3 brothers. There are 3 identical brothers. They all practice pseudo-medicine. Their names are Ned, Ted, and Zed. They have a falling out. Ned and Zed disavow each other, but they both agree to never speak of Ted again.
Why is that?
We don't know. They never speak of it.
Okay.
All we know is he's called the Forbidden Brother.
Okay.
And so that is the backstory for Borderlands. That brings us up to the first game.
Yes.
And if you're wondering, like, hey, it's only been 20 minutes. That's kind of short. It is. It is very short. We don't know much about the past, but this is when it's going to start getting a bit more fleshed out. Yes. So we have our main 4 Vault Hunters in the first game. We got Brick the Berserker, Lilith the Siren, Mordecai the Hunter, and Roland the Soldier. You want to talk about those characters at all, Kira?
Well, Lilith is obviously a Siren, and her ability is Phase Shift, which is...
Phase Walk.
Phase Walk?
Yes.
Yes, Phase Walk. She basically goes temporarily into another dimension and is able to get out of that dimension as well in a different spot than she came in. So
yeah, but it's like a different spatial plane of reality. She still like walks around and acts like you would in any other situation, but no one can see her because she's not within our same 3D physical space. It's like almost like a limbo kind of thing.
Yes.
Is that the only character you wanted to talk about?
Mordecai has his pet called Bloodwing. Honestly, Brick the Berserker and Roland the Soldier are pretty normal dudes, so they're kind of boring.
Wow, there goes half our listeners. Brick is a big, huge, strong, punchy guy.
Yeah.
And that's basically all you need to know. And Roland is a kind of honorable soldier. He used to be one of the Crimson Lance.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So not so boring.
Okay.
I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to do Borderlands this episode is because we spent the last episode talking about the 4-player featuring the girl trope. So this goes directly in line with that. So I can understand you, Kira, for feeling a little bit tired of the hypermasculinity, especially since all of the male characters have, super defined muscles.
Yeah, I played as the Siren in this game.
But Lilith is pretty awesome.
Yeah, she is.
Although I like playing as Roland personally.
Yeah.
His ammo for days. Anyway, so John, who starts going by the name of Jack, ends up using his daughter, Angel, to manipulate these Vault Hunters, to open a vault for him by having Angel remotely contact them and help them out and, guide them to the vault.
Yes, because by this point he had patched his daughter into the communication system on the planet.
Exactly.
And into a Hyperion satellite.
So Marcus, the weapons dealer, he drops the Vault Hunters off at Firestone, where they meet Claptrap, the original one, and Dr. Zed. Mm-hmm. After defeating some bandits and finding New Haven, the Vault Hunters end up meeting up with Dr. Patricia Tanis, a former doll scientist. They find the vault only opens once every 200 years, so they only have a small window of which if they want to open it, and that time is approaching soon. Tanis finds this out and lets the Vault Hunters know, so they know they have a deadline now.
Yes. During this adventure, they meet Scooter, who creates the Kitcherized vehicle system on Pandora.
Yep. He's nice. Misogynist, but nice.
Yeah.
Atlas's Crimson Lance's Siren leader, Commandant Steele, ends up demanding that all vault keys be handed over.
Mm-hmm. And,
did I mention that? Like, the leader of the Crimson Lance for Atlas is herself a Siren.
Yes, she is. And because of her demanding that all vault keys handed over, when the Vault Hunters actually do find a key, they end up having to fight the Crimson Lance, who end up opening the vault. And
because of that, Guardians attack all of them.
Yes.
When Commandant Steele ends up actually opening the vault, releasing the destroyer, because everyone thought it was going to be treasure, right? Mm-hmm. Nope, it releases the destroyer. The destroyer ends up piercing her through the stomach with a tentacle and kills her.
Yes.
The Vault Hunters, however, they managed to kill the destroyer because now that it was in our reality, it was mortal. Mm-hmm. It was only a threat when it was in the other dimension that it originally came from and being sealed in the prison. But being released, we can kill it. Really tough, but we can kill it. And that's what they did.
Yes.
Now, there was a side effect, though, because this was, the whole point of Pandora was to keep this thing sealed. There were other vaults on Pandora, but this was the big one. So opening this vault actually unleashed stored iridium from throughout the entire planet of Pandora.
Exactly, which caused, floods of iridium on the planet.
Not quite that much, but lots of iridium, enough to make it viable to mine for it. Mm-hmm. But that's not the end of the Vault Hunters. They had some other additional stories, so we'll just kind of go through some of their other adventures that they had after they did that. Because that was the story that they were mostly famous for, but they had some extra adventures along the way.
Yeah.
Or after.
Yeah, and they're famous for that because hardly anyone ever actually gets to open a vault, and they did it, so...
Exactly. So they had the zombie island of Dr. Ned. And Dr. Ned there, he created a zombie virus that created chaos in Jacob's Cove. Mm-hmm. TK Baha, you remember him? The old guy?
Yes.
He's brought back to life as a semi-intelligent zombie.
That's awesome.
He didn't last long on Pandora, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He lost his eyesight, his legs, his wife.
It was terrible.
Yep. But now it's okay because he's a zombie.
Yes.
He can talk, I think, ish.
Yeah, he can talk.
And then the Vault Hunters find out that Ned is responsible for the zombies, and they kill him, and then he comes back, and they kill him again.
Yeah.
Next we have...
Mad Moxie's Underdome Riot, which is when Moxie, who is the mother of Scooter, she rebrands herself as Mad Moxie and starts a tournament, which is basically just an arena where people try to kill each other. And the Vault Hunters actually end up rising up in this tournament and killing lots of people.
Kira's drunk right now,
and
guys.
That's great. No, I'm not.
I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. So that's basically it. It's a pretty simple one. They also had the secret armory of General Knoxx. because Atlas deployed a retaliatory invasion of Pandora by the Crimson Lance, led by General Alphonso Knoxx, under the command of the nepotistic Admiral Mikey.
Yeah.
Knoxx was not happy about this. He was a seasoned general, a veteran, right? And his superior was a 5-year-old kid who was promoted to admiral because of nepotism. Because remember, no government.
Yeah.
So like some of his dialogues were depressing but hilarious, where he's like, Admiral Mikey, I'm just reporting to you based on your latest mission of like discover the macaroni, because you actually had the macaroni on the paper. I do not know what this means, sir. I don't remember the exact, but that's kind of the motif of the kind of messages that they would have.
Yes.
Athena is the most prominent Lance assassin. When she's tricked by Atlas into killing her sister Jess so that she wouldn't leave their employ, she ends up betraying Atlas and vows to kill every single one of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great job. You have your most powerful soldier going against you. Hope that 5-year-old admiral comes in handy.
Yeah. And she ends up recruiting the Vault Hunters to taking down this retaliatory invasion of Pandora. And they kill Atlas.
Well, yeah, they go after him. They start annihilating them.
Yeah, and General Knoxx is so depressed, he kind of just he fights them to encourage them to kill him.
Well, General Knoxx is literally going to kill himself. He's suicidal, which is tragic. Because honestly, after going through this whole thing when I was playing it, I just really kind of empathized with him and how terrible his job was,
Yeah, it was awful.
So he's going to blow himself up. But then all of a sudden the Vault Hunters show up and he's like, all right, let's have fun with it.
Yeah.
And they end up beating him and they kill him, granting him his wish, sadly enough. Mm-hmm. However, in doing so, the Vault Hunters accidentally reawakened the ancient Corporatocracies the Invincible. But they managed to kill it.
Yeah.
It's one of those raid bosses that takes 50 hours to do. I never beat one. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, we did not.
We got killed in the first and it was like, this is not for us. So, next you have Claptrap's new robot revolution.
Which is when Hyperion decided it was a good idea to install, what was it called?
Hyperion remotely installed the INAC system, which stands for the Interplanetary Ninja Assassin Claptrap system.
Yeah.
And they remotely activated Claptrap as almost like he was a sleeper agent, downloading the file into him. And they programmed him to kill the Vault Hunters. So anyway, the INAC trap ends up deciding to instead put his new skills towards founding a revolution for Claptraps. Because Claptraps, by this, everyone hates Claptraps because of their personality flaws. They're always upbeat. They can be quite annoying sometimes. But, I mean, Claptraps are people too.
So it's the revolution, and Hyperion hires you to put down the revolution.
Yes. And in the revolution, they end up developing devices that can turn dead organic corpses into cyborgs, effectively reanimating them. It's like this attachment they put on top of you and has brain juice and stuff in it and nanobots. They end up doing that to a lot of people, so you end up having to face a lot of your old foes over again. So, like Kira was saying, the Hyperion VP, Jeffrey Blake, contracts the Vault Hunters to hunt down Claptrap and put a stop to the revolution. And then the Vault Hunters killed the revolting Claptraps, including Knoxx-trap, Steel Trap, and Ned Trap.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was... Sorry, did you want to...
Knoxx was not happy to be alive again.
It was so sad. All he wanted was to die, and then they just brought him back. He literally was like when you see him, he looks towards the screen, he's like, I'm back. Wait, I'm back?
Yeah. He freaks out about it.
And then when Steel comes back... she when she gets woken up by the Claptraps, she's like, "What? Where are we? Where'd the vault go? And what is this hole here?" And she sees the big hole in her abdomen.
Yeah.
So, and then Ned, he came back as a zombie thing twice. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so after that, the Vault Hunters, they defeated the Mega INAC tank conglomerate and stopped the whole claptrap revolution thing because, why have equality for robots too? And that leads us to the game Borderlands, the pre-sequel, which happens in between games 1 and 2.
Yes.
There's a guy named Sir Alistair Hammerlock and his sister, Lady Aurelia Hammerlock. They arrive in Pandora as wealthy adventurers and hunters. Mm-hmm. We also got a little bit of romance action going on the side.
Yes. During this time, Jack dates Mad Moxie for a bit, and Lilith and Roland also date for a bit. And
neither of these relationships last.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Jack, he scavenged the remains of the destroyer, and he found its eyeball was still alive. This thing has only like a single eyeball, and he found it was still alive. It was kind of like also the brain of the thing. So he ended up, severing it, and he incorporated it into Helios to create a laser super weapon.
Yes, which was incredibly powerful.
Yeah. It seemed like he wanted more than that, but he managed to make do with what he had. Mm-hmm. And then you have a guy, he's known as Timothy Lawrence. He signs up for an experiment to become a body double of Jack to pay off his student loans.
Yeah, he was getting paid for this.
So it's evident that Jack was starting to get, he was starting to aim high and trying to get some assurance on the side.
Yeah.
Anyway, Knoxx-trap ends up meeting Jack, and he tells him about his reprogramming. Jack decides to reprogram him once more and recruit some other vault hunters to find the vault on Elpis, since he came up short on the one on Pandora.
Yeah, and so these new vault hunters that he hires to find the vault on Elpis are Athena, the gladiator from Atlas, former Atlas, Oriella, the Baroness, which is Hammerlock's sister, Claptrap, the Frag Trap, which is the reprogrammed Knoxx-trap.
The second reprogrammed version of him.
Yeah. Jack the Doppelganger, which is Timothy Lawrence, and Nisha the Lawbringer, and Wilhelm the Enforcer.
Yep. Nisha being like a gun-tooting kind of girl, and Wilhelm being a cybernetic freak. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to say and insult him or anything, but he literally loves doing it and doesn't care what anyone says. We also have Colonel Tungstina Zarpedon. She makes contact with the Watcher. By the way, she's Colonel of Dahl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She makes contact with the Watcher, who is this mysterious Eridian figure. They're called the Watcher like it's one of the Guardians, one of the robotic versions of the aliens, but the Watcher seems to actually be organic, which is very surprising, which might mean that the Watcher is the sole surviving Eridian.
But we don't know very much about the Watcher.
But regardless, Zarpedon makes contact with the Watcher and discovers the importance of protecting the Vault of Elpis. So she and her former Dahl forces form a new faction called the Lost Legion, and they separate from Dahl. Mm-hmm. So yeah, by this point, Dahl has no influence left.
Yeah, and they're not on Elpis anymore.
Because the Lost Legion then takes over Helios and forces the Vault Hunters and Jack to have to escape.
Yes. And then the Vault Hunters have to get help from a Elpis native called Janie Springs to go to the only town on Elpis called Concordia.
So they regroup there, and the Marif, it's Sheriff and America, but don't ask. The Marif of Concordia ends up betraying Jack, and so Jack kills him. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time he directly killed somebody.
Yes.
So Zarpedon then uses the Eye of Helios, the actual eyeball. She uses it to shoot Elpis to destroy the vault rather than let Jack have it. Of course, it takes a while, so she's shooting this thing over and over again. But with only the moon can only take so much before it ends up breaking.
Mm-hmm. And the Vault Hunters retrieved an AI called Felicity to help Jack make a robot army so that they could retake Helios from Zarpedon.
Yeah, and they stole this AI from Dahl. Mm-hmm. So after that, the Vault Hunters and Jack, they find a guy, Dr. Gladstone, to build the constructors and loader bots for their robot army. So he's just a really good roboticist. Jack then forcibly uploads Felicity into a constructor bot. She attempts to fight back, and the Vault Hunters stop her. It's really sad. It's like you're killing her.
Yeah, and she gets deleted from the constructor, so it has a default.
Well, her memory does. Like, she's essentially
Yes.
like a new personality. So she effectively dies.
Yeah.
So it's really sad. You can really start seeing some dark things in the story. If it hasn't happened already. Anyway, so next we have Professor Nakayama. He's just infatuated with Jack.
And he's a scientist for Hyperion.
Yeah. He ends up creating an AI copy of him, as well as a tiny, flawed clone of the Destroyer. Jack didn't like it, though. It didn't work out.
Yeah, Jack really doesn't like Professor Nakayama in general because he's so obsessed with Jack.
For the longest time, he wouldn't even acknowledge that he knew what the guy's name was.
Yes.
And
Anyway.
like Nakayama, like literally, like would want to be in a relationship. He is gay.
Yes.
Right? But it takes it to like an obsessive level.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, even though Jack never acknowledges him. So anyway, with the help of Lilith, Roland, and Mad Moxie, the Vault Dwellers and Jack use...
Vault Hunters.
Whoops. They use their robot army to retake Helios, and they defeat Zarpedon. Yay!
After they defeat Zarpedon, Lilith, Roland, and Mad Moxie revealed that they were planning to betray Jack this entire time, and say they're rebooting the Eye of Helios to get it back in Jack's control, but actually got him to destroy it.
I mean, when you got to see that eye, I had never felt sorrier for a seemingly omnipotent being of mass destruction before. It was reduced to a single eyeball hooked up into machines being force-fed drugs. It looked so sad.
Yeah, it was being fed iridium or slag.
Iridium.
Yeah, iridium.
We haven't even talked about that yet.
To power it.
So they betrayed them because they just couldn't stand by while Jack did all these terrible things. So, it makes sense. The Vault Hunters and Jack, they find and fight their way past the Lost Legion and Guardians into the Elpis Vault. They then fight and kill the Sentinel, which was essentially the... If Pandora was a prison, he was like the prison guard.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was supposed to watch over it. Isn't he? They had kind of masculine features.
Yeah.
But it was it was a guardian. It was a robotic alien thingamajig. And they acquired the symbol of the vault for Jack. So if you want to know what the symbol is, it's essentially the logo for Borderlands.
Yes.
But this is its relevance in game. It's meant to represent as a symbol for the alien vaults in general. It's their logo. And it, just to describe it on an audio podcast, is essentially a circle with the bottom half of a hyperbola superimposed inside of it.
Yeah. And after they killed the Sentinel, this symbol was in the vault. And Jack, grabbed the symbol or touched it, and this symbol gave him knowledge of the prison on Pandora.
He was able to get visions of it, and he was able to see a different vault, a different prison on Pandora, one that housed a creature called the Warrior, which was basically this engineered monstrosity that was meant to be the ultimate weapon if the Eridians ever needed to sick it on something. I don't know if it's ever expressly said, but maybe their intention was to use it on the Destroyer, except that was impossible.
After Jack gains this knowledge, Lilith, what's it called? Phase walks?
Yes, she used her phase walk ability to sneak up behind him, come up behind him, actually in front of him when he was looking at the symbol, and she has fire powers. That's her siren thing, and she has fire as well as the phase walk. And she just completely burns his face through the symbol and melts the symbol away and destroys it.
Yes.
And now the symbol's insignia is burned onto his face.
Yes, and this
he was a relatively handsome guy, so he was pretty upset about this.
Yes, and this means that he lost one of his eyes as well as having, the scarring on his face.
Yes, and he became extremely vengeful for all Vault Hunters from this point forward. Mm-hmm. And after this, he starts wearing a mask of his own face on top of his face to pretend that the scars aren't there.
Yes.
What?
And after this happens and he declares vengeance, he decides to take over Hyperion. So he kills the current CEO, Tacitor, and takes his position as the CEO, and also starts going by the name Handsome Jack.
Because his ego was just that bruised.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the rise of Handsome Jack right there. Mm-hmm. These Vault Hunters, the latest group of Vault Hunters, I should have specified that earlier, but you had the original 4 with Lilith, Roland, Brick, and Mordecai. They did the whole first thing with the Destroyer. The thing with the Sentinel, the thing with Jack, that was done by, the 6 that you had mentioned previously. Yes. Nisha, Wilhelm, Aurelia, Claptrap, Athena, Timothy, all of them. Mm-hmm. But they still had a few other adventures after this. Like, they were kind of uneasy at this point. Some of them were. But they had they participated in a tournament thing called the Shock Drop Slaughter Pit. They also participated in the Holodome Onslaught. However, Jack ended up finding out about the H source, and he wants to acquire it. So he digitizes the Vault Hunters, and he sends them within Claptrap's AI to retrieve it.
Mm-hmm. And they face a digital alter ego of Claptrap called Shadowtrap.
An evil one.
Huh?
An evil one.
Yes, a digital evil alter ego.
Yes.
And they retrieve the H source.
After defeating him. It's this whole long and arduous process, but that's basically what it boils down to. Mm-hmm. Jack then uses that H source to commit genocide against all Claptraps because he hated them.
Yes.
Including the Frag Trap that helped him out.
He personally killed that one.
Yes. Because he just found Claptrap so annoying, and he's so powerful, he doesn't need these Vault Hunters anymore. Specifically, he doesn't need Frag Trap.
Yeah.
And so he uses the H source to shut down any product line that he wants, specifically the Claptrap line. And so immediately across Pandora, Elpis, and presumably anywhere else they were deployed, all of them just start dying and short-circuiting.
Mm-hmm. It's very sad. Now, after Handsome Jack decides to commit this genocide against Claptraps, several of the Vault Hunters decide to leave, including Athena, who settles down with Janie Springs on Elpis before moving to Pandora. Nisha actually stays with him and ends up dating him, and then Wilhelm also works with him and becomes like his most trusted lieutenant. Mm-hmm.
And then the Shadowtrap alter ego within Claptrap ends up sacrificing himself to keep Claptrap's subroutine's consciousness running despite the genocide. And Claptrap is eventually repaired by Sir Hammerlock and becomes the sole surviving living member of his kind.
Yes.
Which is just tragic.
It is very tragic.
Poor Claptrap. He's like the mascot of the franchise. Mm-hmm. So then Hyperion, under Jack's leadership, ends up dominating Pandora and eliminates any remaining Atlas or Dahl controlling interests.
And he instills a huge iridium mining operation on Pandora. And the runoff from this iridium mining is called slag. And it's used in Hyperion experimentation. And
one of the subjects was a psycho named Krieg.
Yes.
Hyperion also sells the slag to other companies to develop slag-based weapons.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, New Haven is massacred by Jack, pushing the survivors to resettle in Sanctuary. Roland takes the survivors of the Crimson Lance and reforms them into the Crimson Raiders that protect Sanctuary.
Exactly. And after that, Jack begins a huge advertising campaign to attract Vault Hunters to Pandora to find the Vault of the Warrior, but it is actually a trap. And so he attracts them to Pandora just to murder them systematically.
Because of his vengeance that he has sworn upon them. Mm-hmm. The Vault Hunters, there's a new group of Vault Hunters that end up falling for that trap. They are Axton the Commando, Gage the Necromancer, Krieg the Psycho, Maya the Siren, Salvador the Gunzerker, and Zero the Assassin.
Gage was my favorite.
Yeah, she has this death trap companion that she had built for a science fair project at one point. It's awesome. And then Krieg the Psycho has an inner voice, and then an outer voice. Like he's one of the psychos, so he has like this disassociative thing going on. So he'll think a thought, but it won't come out the same way. And it's almost like it's two different personalities. So like there's one time when he sees Maya for the first time and he has a crush on her. He tells himself inside his mind, he's like, oh, look at her. Tell her you love her. Tell her you want to be with her. You want her to protect you and make you a better person, and that you are willing to do whatever it takes to make it in this world with her. I have the shiniest meat bicycle! Close enough.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he is a hero because he ends up making his outer self restrain himself from doing violent acts. Maya, her siren ability is phase lock. She can hold things in a particular point in space. And let's just get moving on from all these guys. So next you have the Vault Hunters. They survive the trap, and they end up meeting Claptrap and Hammerlock, and they're contacted by Angel, who wants to stop Jack.
Yes. And after they're contacted by Angel, they meet up with the original Vault Hunters, Lilith and Roland specifically, in Sanctuary.
At Angel's advice, the Vault Hunters kill Wilhelm and they take his core back to Sanctuary, but it was a trap. The core takes the city's shields down, and Jack opens fire on the city from Helios.
Lilith teleports Sanctuary away with her powers and using Iridium to also
a lot of Iridium.
Like to power
basically
her powers.
Getting addicted to it.
Yes.
And the Sirens are the only ones that can do that. Mm-hmm. Angel ends up asking forgiveness by telling them about Jack's plan to awaken the warrior and how to find the vault key.
Yes, exactly.
The Vault Hunters end up following Angel's plan to penetrate Hyperion's defenses at her location. They destroy the Iridium machinery, but doing so kills Angel because it cuts her off from the supply that she's been force-fed since she was a child.
Yeah, and she's being force-fed this to charge up the vault key that Jack now has.
Yep. And Jack was extremely upset about that, but she honestly wanted to die after all that enslavement.
Yeah, she used her final words to call Handsome Jack an asshole, her father.
But now he became delusionally vengeful against these particular Vault Hunters.
Yes, and he ends up killing Roland and then kidnapping Lilith to finish charging up the vault key.
He then used the charged vault key to awaken the warrior, but the Vault Hunters managed to kill it. Then they killed Jack and freed Lilith.
And Lilith ends up finding information that ends up pulling up like this huge map of vaults all across the universe. Which,
well, not all across the universe, in the interstellar space.
Yes, interstellar space. That ends up like getting a lot of people to go vault hunting again.
Yeah, this information gets leaked and it spurs a whole new age of vault hunting.
Yeah.
The Vault Hunters also, they awaken a few monstrous creatures, including Terramorphous the Invincible and Vermiferous the Invincible, but they managed to kill them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they had a few other adventures after this main one, because this, again, was the main one, but Vault Hunters, they usually never just stop, right?
Yeah.
So Captain Scarlet and her pirate's booty, yeah, I know, it's what it's called, it's dumb. So Captain Scarlet and her friend the Sandman attempt to find pieces of a compass that lead them to a treasure, but Scarlet betrays Sandman, who manages to get away with the pieces. The Vault Hunters meet Shade in the town of Oasis, where the townsfolk are corpses, so Shade can pretend he isn't alone. The Vault Hunters retrieve the piece of the compass for Scarlet, but she betrays them and activates the compass, only to get eaten by the Leviathan. The Vault Hunters defeated her within the Leviathan, and then they killed the Leviathan. There's a lot of killing.
Yes. They
also killed Hyperius the Invincible and Master Guy the Invincible. So, there's that.
Yeah. Next adventure is Mr. Torg's Campaign of Carnage, and it's Torg found a vault under a crater that only opens when Pandora's champion spills the blood of a coward. So they end up setting up a badass crater of badassitude, and this is a tournament, which is basically lots of people killing each other. Mad Moxie sponsors the Vault Hunters in the tournament, and they win the tournament, open the vault, and get a lot of loot.
They also killed Pyro Pete the Invincible. Mm-hmm. They also participated in the Natural Selection Annex, And then they had the Sir Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt, where the Vault Hunters go to the Hunter's Grotto Sir Hammerlock for big game hunting. The Vault Hunters, they run into Nakayama again. And Nakayama is trying to clone Jack.
He's trying to create a body.
Yeah, because he really likes Jack. He doesn't like that he's dead, so he's trying to bring him back. He ends up creating something that ends up being called Jackenstein, and he sets it loose upon the Vault Hunters, and they killed it. So Nakayama ends up trying to face the Vault Hunters himself because he's just so mad, but he trips on the stairs and falls to his death.
Very anticlimactic.
They also encounter Vericidius the Invincible and Dixidius the Invincible, because why not kill some giant creatures?
And
we never talked about Tiny Tina, but she's an interesting character. She's a friend that they made and stays in Sanctuary sometimes.
And Tiny Tina's Assault of Dragon Keep was a game of bunkers and badasses that they played with the Vault Hunters. And during that game, it becomes obvious that she's just trying to cope with Roland's death, and they end up pretty much consoling her over it.
It was a touching moment.
Yes, and Bunkers and Badasses is basically their version of D&D.
Yeah. And the Vault Hunters also participated in the Digistruck Peak Challenge. They killed Jaquezo Lantern as a favor to zombie TK Baja. They competed in a tournament organized by Mr. Torg to defeat the Waddle Gobbler. They found Marcus's missing gun shipment and saved the town of Gingerton from Mr. Tinder Snowflake. Christmas, why not?
Yes. Mad Moxie attempted to resolve a dispute between the Hodunk and Zafra clans, so she arranged for a Goliath mutant of each family to get married. They attempt to craft a love potion for the marriage, but they just end up frenzying and trying to kill everyone. So the Vault Hunters have to kill him.
And then Sir Hammerlock was kidnapped by the invincible son of Cromorax the Invincible in Wham Bam Island. They went to the island to rescue Hammerlock, but they were attacked by relatives of bandits they killed. The Vault Hunters killed the son of Cromorax and rescued Sir Hammerlock, and they received messages from their loved ones, so that was nice.
Yes.
Okay, and then after that we have Tales from the Borderlands.
Which, in my opinion, is the most interesting game.
Yeah, because the other ones are very gameplay focused. This one's more story based. We cannot possibly cover it in its entirety here, mostly because the story changes as you play it. Now, the choices aren't like super derivative or divergent. They kind of all will follow a set path. So we're going to give you a rundown of what happens. But if you want to see really the choices, that's just something we don't have time to get into today. So, Kira, would you like to go over kind of the gist of what ends up happening in the Tales from the Borderlands franchise?
Yes. Okay. So after Jack died, the higher-ups at Hyperion scrambled for power, and the CEO ended up being a guy called Henderson, who gets killed by a guy called Vasquez. There's this guy Reese and his partner. He has partners called Vaughn and Yvette who try to help him climb the corporate ladder, and Vasquez screws him over.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
Anyway. Yeah.
So there's con artists like Fiona and Sasha. They still have to make a living.
Yeah, they live on Pandora. And then Reese, Vaughn, Fiona, and Sasha end up having to go on a huge adventure. And the handsome Jack AI that Professor Nakayama made makes an appearance.
Athena ends up helping them out, but she ends up getting kidnapped by the original Vault Hunters. Athena is interrogated by Lilith for why she helped Jack previously. Lilith orders for Athena to be killed, but the Watcher stops her and warns her about a coming war that will need them all to fight for. Reese, Fiona, and Sasha, they infiltrate Helios, but handsome Jack's AI gets loose into the system. Eventually, Helios is brought crashing into Pandora to stop Jack. The Gortys Project is used to activate the vault, the one that was the Gortys Project was made for, and they awaken the Traveler. The loader bot that they had with them, that it was one of the Hyperion ones, captures Reese and Fiona and makes them explain what's going on. And then all the teammates that you've made from the adventure, depending on your decisions, they end up getting together and they end up fighting the Traveler. And then the main characters, Reese and Fiona, they teleport away in the vault. Mm-hmm. And it's not really clear what that means. Personally, I think it's because the whole vault was about teleporting and the Traveler could teleport. I think they gained the ability to teleport via the technology.
Yes.
And that basically catches us up to speed. I'm really sorry we had to kind of rush there at the end, but I was not expecting us to be able to talk this long about it.
Yeah.
We maybe spent a little much too time on the setup, but I don't care. It was worth it. That was the most interesting part, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Maybe aside from Tales from the Borderlands, but again, we had to summarize that on that regardless.
Yes.
But it was just so good. Okay, so we're just going to talk some thoughts about what we felt about the game. In future episodes, we might spend more time than this. We were thinking about maybe doing like 15 minutes, but we are running out of time, so we're going to do quick takes, all right?
Yes.
So, just give me everything you're thinking, Kira, although pass it back to me if you need to take a breath. Just go for it.
Okay, so Tales from the Borderlands was the best one. It was an emotional roller coaster. I laughed so hard that I ended up crying, and I also cried very hard and sobbed. And I'm just going to say, I ship Reese and Sasha, and Janie and Athena is like the best relationship. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I like that.
I want to say that the Borderlands franchise was originally very problematic. Mm-hmm. In fact, all of like the gay couples in the original game were laughingstocks. In fact, the first one was between two bandits, and you actually killed one, and the other guy was upset about it. It's like, oh, it's funny because he's gay.
Yeah.
Which was really insulting, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
However, they've gotten much better about that over time, especially in Tales from the Borderlands, but even in some of the other more recent games. Like, I mean, look at Athena and Janie getting together.
Yeah.
And I think it was a very positive way of doing a kind of relationship like that. And Mad Moxie, as well as Torg, are known for liking both genders.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And, Borderlands, the pre-sequel, as well as Tales from the Borderlands, had a very good gender diversity, as well as, like racial diversity. And they even gave so much humanity to the robot characters. So,
oh, yeah. And Tales from the Borderlands, I'm not going to... Loaderbot. Although, to be fair, we should actually be crying over Scooter, since that was the only permanent death in Tales from the Borderlands.
We forgot to mention that. Scooter dies.
In Tales from the Borderlands,
He ends up giving his life for Fiona, at least in the playthrough we played. Is that optional, or is it?
No, he dies no matter what.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that is the only permanent death in Tales from the Borderlands. We warned you about spoilers, so I don't feel bad about saying that.
Yeah, so this has basically been your rundown of the Borderlands franchise. We'd like to come back and revisit. Borderlands 3 ends up getting released. We can make another one.
Mm-hmm. That would be awesome.
We don't plan on making only one per franchise. We're just going to try to give it some breathing room before we go back to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, this game at the end of the day is a gun game. It has automatic generation that makes so many guns. So that's what most people play for. A lot of people don't even care about the story. But I feel like the guns are the hook for most people, but the story's there to be just interesting. Like, I really wish Borderlands was better at telling a story. In most of their games, you have to try so hard to figure out what's going on here. And they compromise story values just for a cheap joke. And I don't like that.
A lot of the time, yeah.
But Tales from the Borderlands, I felt made up for that in spades.
Yeah, because it was such a gripping and good story.
And despite that, I think what Borderlands really has going for it is environmental storytelling. They create a completely unique environment and use that as the set piece for their story. And that, I think, is impressive. And I think we can learn a lot about what would happen if a corporatocracy essentially took over our world.
Yeah.
So... anyway, this is our episode on Borderlands. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We actually have some links now if you guys want to check us out in the future on Game Theorem. We have a Facebook page, Twitter, LinkedIn. No, we don't have that. Instagram, YouTube, Tumblr, yes. And iTunes, of course. Check us out there.
Yeah.
You can find pretty much all the links in the description of wherever you're looking at this.
Yeah.
Or at least a link to the link that has the other links.
Yeah.
And if you want to email us with anything we got wrong or anything you want to add, email us at gametheorems@gmail.com.
Yes.
So thank you guys, and this will be. So what's our outer thing? I don't remember. Bye.
Bye.